welcome to a very special edition of The Piano Men with Stanley Carr. I am pleased to welcome pianist, vocalist, and songwriter Rachel Solomon to the show tonight. Penned the female Billy Joel by her Berklee College of Music songwriting teacher, Rachel released her debut solo record in January of 2013 entitled Love Ourselves, followed by a second EP entitled Right On Time in the spring of 2017. The song Baltimore from Right On Time was recognized as a top 5 winner in the folk Americana category of the 17th annual Great American Song Contest. Both of Rachel's albums, by the way, are available as physical copies. Rachel has also played sideman to notable names such as Laura Bell Bundy, Ruby Amanfu, Love and Theft, Krystal Keith, Heidi Newfield of country group Trick Pony, and Texas country/Americana artist Adam Hood. She has performed on The Today Show, Toby Keith's Shut Up and Hold On tour, and also has a song placed on MTV's 16 and Pregnant. Rachel is grateful for the opportunities she continues to have, and she's played all over the world. Places that include Guantanamo Bay, Norway, Germany, South Korea, Switzerland, St. Martin, and all over the United States, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Rachel. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Stanley. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Let's get into it. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Well, I've always written something kind of interesting in my bio, that I was born in New Jersey, raised in Arizona, reared in Texas, schooled in Boston, and now I live in Nashville. So, I mean,
all over the country.
All over the country. My family is still in Texas. They've been there for 25 years. So I say I'm from there, but I was born in New Jersey and my family was from Philadelphia.
So a lot of Northeastern connections going on there.
Yes, it's kind of undeniable. When people from the South meet me, they know I'm not really from the South. And when people from the Northeast meet me, they're kind of like, but you're from Texas, but they kind of know that I'm part of them too.
So what part of New Jersey were you from? Just curious.
Sure, it was South Jersey because most people often can, when you say you're from New Jersey, they sort of assume the northern New York side, but we were from the southern, more Philly side.
So like Atlantic City, that kind of area?
Even more south, yeah.
Oh,
like
wow.
Cherry Hill, really suburban
yeah.
Philadelphia.
There's kind of like a border in between them.
Yes,
so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Those cities were definitely, border cities of Pennsylvania.
Just curious, another thing, did you grow up in a musical family at all? Were your parents musicians too?
So yes, the short answer is yes. My dad was a professional working musician for, a little over a decade. And my mom had played piano at some point in her life when she was a kid into her years.
What made you want to pursue music the most? Was it because of your parents?
Well, there are really old photos of me and my sister as little kids sitting next to my dad at the piano, on the piano bench. So, I mean, the piano and music was always part of our family. But I don't know if there was any one thing that made me want to be a musician. I'm one of those people who really, really feels that it wasn't really a choice. It was just something I knew that, I was going to do. So, I mean, my family definitely was part of that. Part of me wanting to do it, but it was something something greater and more natural than that.
So you kind of fell into it, you could say.
I fell into it, and it kept going and going, and I wanted to keep going and going, and I'm still going and going.
There you go. Yeah. Well, so who were some of your first influences starting out as a musician? Who are some of the artists you like listening to?
Well, my parents are in their 70s. So, the records that my dad had were 60s music, even, some kind of Duke Ellington, that kind of jazz. So, I mean, I always kind of felt a connection to what would especially now be considered older music. I remember one of the first famous musician people that I knew of and could recognize was Paul McCartney. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, even in the 90s, I guess kind of serendipitously, the Beatles anthology got released.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really, really inspired by music that was already at that point, several decades old. So, I mean, pop music like that, Billy Joel, who naturally played the piano. I played classical music for a long time. So that in its own way has been, inspirational, as has some jazz. I played saxophone for a long time in my youth, and was really into jazz as well.
Were you like in the school band? Did they have a school band where you went to school?
Yes, there sure was. And I started band in Arizona, where you could start band in 5th grade. I don't think you could do that in Austin once we moved there. So I was sort of lucky. I had an additional year on some people. And my dad had played saxophone and piano, and so that is what I also played.
Was it like a smooth transition? Did you start with saxophone or did you start with piano?
No, I started with piano.
Okay.
Yeah, the piano was, I took little kids lessons. Well, my dad would sort of write out some stuff for me to do when I was really young, like 5. But then the real, kids lessons started at like 6. So I had a few years of piano before doing saxophone.
Did you have recitals or concert performances that you participated in growing up?
Yes, there was, at least 1 a year, if not 2 a year, piano recitals that, I must have participated in for 10 years or more, probably, until I went to college. There was always recitals.
Those are always fun to do, just kind of getting that exposure, getting some practice, making sure that you're knowing what you're playing and you develop confidence. That's always important at such a young age. So you mentioned some of your influences. Do you remember like the first, at that time, I believe it was cassettes, then CDs. What were some of your favorite CDs, cassettes, even vinyl? What were some of your favorite albums growing up?
Well, I know this for sure. The first tape that I purchased as a little kid. So this is like maybe 1990, maybe even like a little bit early. No, it was probably around then. It was a Bette Midler Greatest Hits.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason that that was something I wanted to buy was because I had been playing on the piano the song From a Distance, which at that time I think was on the radio. It was a hit. So I was familiar with that. I was familiar with The Wind Beneath My Wings, which those 2 songs both have really great keyboard parts. So that was, probably part of that.
Also a favorite to play, I believe, at like weddings and anniversaries.
Oh yeah, I learned that song, close to then, and I've been playing it ever since. So gotten a lot of mileage out of it.
Yeah.
So I know that was my first tape that I purchased, but I also I had tapes that were sort of musical theater oriented. Now, I mean, there's like a huge gap between my musical theater knowledge then and now.
So we'll kind of segue a little bit and play one of your cuts off of your album, Right On Time. I actually like this song, Baltimore. It's a great story. Oh, you're welcome. It's a great story. Talks about, change and the need for change in the world. Tell me what was kind of going through your mind when you wrote Baltimore.
Sure. Well, when I wrote this song, it was totally on. Well, it was really inspired. It was something that I knew for a long time that I had wanted to write, but and I always make this like very known, writing about social change, social issues, injustice, political things, that is not something that as a songwriter I ever wrote about. It was not something I felt was really my place to write about. Plenty of songwriters, have, that's sort of like the underlying foundation of the singer-songwriter, going back almost 100 years. But that was not something that I ever felt was mine to write about. And for some reason, I felt inspired to write that song. So, I mean, it's based on, it's about the Baltimore riots after Freddie Gray's death in the custody of the Baltimore police. When I wrote that song, it was already years past the actual event. So I don't know if it took me years to like feel comfortable writing about it, or like really kind of realizing what I wanted to say, because in the song, it's extremely centrist. It doesn't take sides. It doesn't point fingers. It doesn't blame anybody. That's intentional. It focuses on the bottom line, which is change and showing compassion for people. And so that's all very intentional. That's what was going through my head when I wrote that.
Well, we're going to go ahead and play Baltimore. This is Rachel Solomon on the Piano Man with Stanley Carr.
In a world where we say that we don't see color, but it still affects how we treat each other. Are all of us lying, or just trying to figure it out? There's a sun rising over a city in pain, shining a light on hope and change. Out of the dark, we'll find our way. There's a sun rising over a city in pain, shining a light on hope and change. Out of the dark, we're finding our way, but nobody gets there alone. It's what all of us are fighting for.
Piano Man with Stanley Carr. I'm chatting with singer-songwriter and pianist Rachel Solomon tonight about her remarkable career. And you went to the Berklee School of Music, where you learned songwriting. That, I've had a lot of friends that have gone to Berklee, and they've loved the experience that they had over there. Tell me about your time there, because I've heard great things about that school.
Well, when I was there, I think that the way things are there now is very, very different than when I was there. And that has a lot to do with changing technology, changes in music business and music industry. When I was there, it was not too long after Napster, and sort of the beginning of online music, iTunes. Spotify wasn't real yet. So that kind of streaming as a norm was not in existence yet. But, when I was there, the talk of the music industry is changing was just starting. But my dad, who is not a musician anymore, but who was a long time ago, his response to that was, the music business has been changing for 40 years. And so when I was there, there was still an ADAT recording studio, which I would doubt is there anymore. That was kind of arcane even when I was there. There were studios. I had wonderful opportunities to record my music, to play piano and sing vocals on other people's music. I often wished that I had been, I went at 18, I went right after high school. And I knew fully well that you don't have to go to music school if you're going to be a professional musician. I knew all that, but I had everything, my sights 100% set on Berklee, because I knew I wanted to be in contemporary music. I wanted to work. I wanted to be a professional and be really serious about it. And at the time, I didn't know of another school where that was possible. Now I am aware of several other schools that offer music business programs. I mean, that's not what I studied, but, I know of other schools which kind of evolve around professional music. And I really wasn't aware of that then.
Right.
Berklee definitely then and now in a lot of ways, takes the spotlight with the fame factor and the cool factor. And so.
And it's not an easy school to get into. I went to this summer camp called the Jam here in Nashville, the greater Nashville area, and several of my friends that went to Berklee kind of helped out with this. They had a partnership with Berklee School of Music,
Cool.
where the director of the college or admissions director would come in and speak to the kids. At least, I want to say it was like 2 summers, or for 3 of the summers that I was there, he would come in and they would do workshops for the students, do like mock auditions and
Awesome.
give advice. Being able to hear all that was kind of special, because it's not every day when you have somebody from one of the top music schools in the country or even in the world come in and speak to people for a music camp, in somewhere in the Nashville area. I mean,
Yeah, I'm amazed. I mean, I sort of wish, I went to camp when I was, a kid, music camps in Austin, and I don't think anything happened like that where like a representative, it wasn't quite connected like that.
Yeah.
But when I was at a music conference for band, I made like, the state band when I played saxophone.
Sure. Yeah.
There was like a huge sort of college night,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I saw the Berklee table and I made a beeline. I ran like in the convention center.
Well, if you want something real bad, they say go after it. So that's important.
Yeah, and I did. I wish I had been a little bit older when I went to Berklee, because I don't know, I think I would have really grasped more of what was going on. And I mean, I ran myself ragged when I was there. I felt like I had to and wanted to take advantage of every opportunity to play live, do recordings, collaborate with people, do whatever,
Yeah.
And that's the point where, it just runs you down. And you're not even 20 years old and you're trying to handle, your rent, living situation, so I do wish I'd been just a little bit older.
What were some of the skills and lessons that you kind of took from Berklee that you applied to later on in life?
Sure. Well, I always think of this one class that I took, which I felt it prepped me best for real live music recordings, music business recording sessions.
Okay.
And I don't know, if they offer a class like this now, but at the time it was the recording rhythm section class. You met every week, like it was 9 a.m. I hate being places at 9 a.m. now. And I did then too, but I did it for that class. It was a band, I was the only pianist, keyboard player in it. And it was a drummer, bass player, guitar player. Up every week there was a new artist who wrote a chart, and you read the chart and you recorded it and recorded overdubs. And I found that parlayed better than any other class really that I took at Berklee to real life, because especially when I got here to Nashville and I started doing recording sessions, that is exactly what I'd done at school. And it was kind of rare for something in real life pro music to mirror, something that I had experienced at school so accurately.
That's really nice to hear. Did you ever get a chance to play around the Boston area?
I did. So this is kind of funny. I was only in Boston for 3 years. I went to school during the summers. I honestly, looking back, wish that I had taken some summers off and traveled. I could have gone to Europe and stuff. But I was so dang driven. I wanted to stay in town. I wanted people to know who I was. I didn't want people to forget that I was there. So I was only there 3 And by that third year, I was playing in bands. I was even doing, like, I remember doing at least one paid recording session. And I had, this is interesting, I had a piano bar gig, which was the first gig of that kind that I had had. It was kind of more cabaret style. It was in the theater district downtown at what was the Tremont Hotel, which was bought by Wyndham, and I don't know what it is now. That bar is probably not there anymore. But so, yeah, I was gigging. I was even making, kind of a living doing music. But it was like the 3-year mark, and I was going to take one more semester. I was actually taking that summer off. I was going to take one more semester to complete the degree. And I got hired by a Nashville-based touring band.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, I was gigging around Boston and doing stuff there, but I left in order to take this touring gig, which, it's unrequited in a way. I mean, I'm still here in Nashville doing stuff. So, I mean, I guess it was meant to be in a lot of ways.
Do you remember some of your favorite instructors from your time at Berklee?
I do. I mean, you mentioned my songwriting teacher who called me the female Billy Joel. His name was Henry Gaffney, and he has since passed away. But he, as a songwriting teacher, yeah, he was someone who we understood and appreciated me as a songwriter, and I didn't major in songwriting when I was there. People who majored in songwriting, I mean, there were some really wonderful people. I mean, Jesse Terry is a working songwriter. He's very well known in like songwriter circles and house concert circles. He's really made a name for himself as an independent working songwriter. And so people like that were really prominent in the songwriting department. But I felt very different because I was focused so much on playing piano and, on doing a lot of other things.
Sure.
But Henry really just appreciated everything that I brought to the table. And also he lived part-time in New York. So, I mean, and had in the 80s and was a working songwriter in New York in the 80s. So I think, someone like me was someone that he appreciated.
And you've also had the opportunity to get your work out on a national platform. One of your songs got on MTV 16 and Pregnant. Can you describe the feeling of getting your work shown on such a unique medium like television?
Sure. That's kind of an interesting and Berklee related story. As a songwriter, I don't really like to co-write a lot. And in Nashville, that's kind of the name of the game, and it's not something that I feel right about. But when I was at Berklee in a class, I co-wrote the song that made it onto 16 and Pregnant with someone else. His name is Kyle James Hauser.
Wow.
Yeah, so we wrote that song as an assignment in class, and years later, that ended up being the song with him as the artist. That was the song that made it onto MTV. So that's kind of an interesting, you never know where, things in your past will lead you, it's kind of interesting.
So you majored in piano, is that correct?
Well, so the actual major was professional music.
Okay.
Which seems kind of generic, but, people said that it was either for the person who didn't know what they wanted to do or for the person who knew exactly what they wanted to do. And you could kind of design it yourself. And that's sort of what I did. So I did a lot of very piano focused things, but I also did a lot of very songwriting focused things. I sort of split it down the middle.
You kind of have the best of both worlds that way.
Yeah. And that worked for me. But I sometimes think that I really should, the reason I did that is because I focused on things that I knew I wanted to do and I knew I was good at and could be good at. And but as a result, I didn't really take a lot of like technology and engineering courses.
Yeah.
And, man, had I done that, I would definitely be way further down the line when it comes to engineering and tech than I am now. I mean, where I am now has taken, just years of trial and error on my own, and it would have been nice if I had a little bit more of a foundation when I went there.
So we'll go ahead and segue into this next selection called Can I Come Back Home? Can you explain what this song is about?
Well, sure. This is a song that, while it is deeply personal and makes people cry, it's also about like a reality that isn't quite the truth. Because it's sort of about, it's about going after your dreams and feeling like you've failed. And so you move back home, to try to start again. And that's not 100% true, still at this point, and I'm knocking on my wood table, I haven't had to move back home. But it's like an alternate reality, when you're pursuing something that's so important to you and it's not working out in the way you want. I mean, in that way I can relate to that part, but I sort of reframed it in just a different universe.
Well, the thing is that, there's so much opportunity in so many different markets and places across the country. So, it's never say never, never too late.
It's really true, man. And I'm, especially with, I don't know if this is okay to mention, with the pandemic going on, that has really made me think about things in a very different way.
Absolutely.
My perception is altered. It has shifted, and I'm looking at things very differently, and it's not too late. It's okay to incorporate new things, to learn new things. And, my point of view has definitely been changed, because of this.
As we all are. So we'll go ahead and play Can I Come Back Home? You're listening to Rachel Solomon. And we're back on the Piano Men talking with singer-songwriter and pianist Rachel Solomon tonight about her career in the music business. So this is kind of the part of the show when I have guests on. I kind of ask them some questions and provide any anecdotal information about some of the artists that they've worked with over the years. And you've worked with a lot of people throughout your career so far. And right now I'll throw out some names of some folks you've toured with, played with. We'll start with Ruby Amanfu.
Okay, sure. I've only worked with Ruby once or twice. And that's probably more recently than some of the artists that I've played with, because the last couple of years I haven't been doing sideman work. I've been doing different kinds of solo work and solo touring work. But yeah, I met Ruby through a friend of mine here in Nashville. And we played, it was like a music festival in Savannah. And it was sort of like a new music festival. It was maybe only the first or second year that it was going on, and she was the headliner, and she had a really unique concept she wanted to do. So it was her and me as the pianist and a drummer, and that was it. And it was just the three of us.
Okay. Laura Bell Bundy.
Yeah, that was a fun gig, and that lasted for several years. I got on that gig after her sort of splash into country music. So it was after Giddy On Up was a single, and she wasn't doing like a sort of regular tour at that point, which was too bad, because everybody in the band was kind of the same age at that time. Everybody was sort of around 30, and we said, multiple times, this would have been a really fun group to do like a real tour with. That was a regular kind of constant tour. Mm-hmm. But the last gig that group did, it was a couple years ago now, and it was a benefit in New York City. She still did, at least a couple years ago, work on Broadway, and so she was still very connected and working in those circles. Everybody in the band was fun to work with. And
Adam Hood.
So Adam Hood, is known in, smaller circles, Texas country, Americana. Some of my first Nashville recording sessions were on Adam Hood sessions. At the time he was a songwriter with Carnival Music. Carnival was a publishing company. They, had like artist management. I think they were a label too. And just on every Adam Hood session, I loved the songs. I loved them so much. And he never did, as far as I know, he didn't do like a full band tour or anything, but he did do live gigs in Nashville. And at one point, Carnival, I'm trying to remember the facts, but they did release an album of his that was being like widely released,
Sure.
which was sort of the first time I think they did that for him. And what they did was all the sessions that I and this really great band that included Fred Eltringham, and I'm trying to remember, Craig Young was the bass player, Russ Paul played steel, just like Nashville session-y people.
Yeah.
What happened is all the sessions that we had done through the years just kind of got upgraded and put on that album. So that was really special. I was really thankful for that to happen. And I haven't seen Adam in a long time or played with him in a long time, but I remember playing with him just to be a very enriching and important experience really in my time in Nashville.
And also we got Krystal Keith. How was it like working with Krystal?
Yeah, so she notably is the daughter of Toby. And so that's why we were on the Shut Up and Hold On tour a couple of years ago. Yeah. So that was an awesome experience. That was the first really big tour that I was on. So there were a lot of really, really nice situations with that tour bus, flying out to the gig. Nice food arrangement, which is nice to have when you're in an environment like that. Krystal was great to work with. The band was also great people. We were friends and enjoyed traveling and playing together. So yeah, I played with her for maybe like a little more than a year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier you got hired by a touring band here in Nashville. Is that tell me about that experience? What is that? What brought you to Nashville at first?
Sure. So yes, it is. And I was told at the time, when you coming to Nashville with a gig was kind of a rare thing. I don't know how it works for people now if you're just showing up in Nashville now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was hired by this all-women band, and it still exists today. It's called Mustang Sally.
Okay.
And they were sort of they were reforming the band. There had been some turnover, some people had left, and the band leader was trying to find some new people. And so she did something that was actually really smart. She went to colleges where there would be maybe like a higher
people
concentration. Yeah, it's a higher concentration of women who played instruments. And so that's it. That comes back to Berklee too. I auditioned for the band when I was at Berklee, and maybe a year or so later, received an email that said, "Hey, changes in the wind. We would like to bring you down." And so I left school. There was at the time, maybe it is still now, there was a saying that if you left Berklee before finishing, that you've made it. But see, it was the time of online schooling, so I did leave before completing, but I completed online. So I got the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And that's pretty, online schooling is just, people say it's the way of the future.
Yeah, I know, this coming fall, schools are just going to be online. I don't know. I would like to think that, you can take advantage of both in-person and online schooling. I mean, I can't imagine a world where your school never met in person ever.
I can't either. But yeah, so you moved to Nashville. I bet you were thrilled once you got that heard that announcement that that you got the gig, and that had to have felt really good.
It was cool. Yeah. I mean, I knew that I wanted to, start working as a musician as soon as possible
Mm-hmm.
after school. And this gig came along. And so I took this gig, and I toured with this band full time for 7 years.
Mm.
And it really taught me a lot about being on the road. We were on the road for 200 days a year. We did a lot of different kinds of gigs. We did original music. We headlined festivals. We also opened for like Big and Rich and 38 Special. I'm trying to think who else. I think we opened for Billy Currington one time when I was part of the group. And we toured internationally, which is really one of my favorite memories of that band. That was my first.
You mentioned you've been playing all these different places across the globe. What were some of your favorite countries to perform in outside of the United States?
Oh, I mean, it's easy to say all of them, and that's not a knock to the U.S. It's
Yeah, right.
just awesome getting to travel globally and play music and have people who are really appreciative and love listening to the music. I mean, I haven't been to Asia in 15 years since I went there with the band that brought me here, Mustang Sally. And I wish that wasn't the case, because we went to Japan and Korea and we played on US military bases. But still those experiences are some of my favorite that I remember back on when it comes to traveling. And I mean, I've played in Canada several times. Canada loves country music, and when I played
Western
in country,
Canada.
yeah,
I love country music.
and when I played in country bands, we usually went and played festivals there. So I have played in Guantanamo Bay. I went there twice with Mustang Sally, and we went there twice. One was for, I don't know if it was around Christmas. I remember sort of a Christmas parade, and it wasn't like a huge concert or there weren't bigger names on the bill, but I remember that experience, just really enjoying it. It was so awesome. And then the second time we played in Guantanamo Bay, we were on the same bill as Puddle of Mud and Drowning Pool. So,
That's a far cry from country.
yes, it was. They had, a blues band playing too, so they kind of had like a little bit of everything on that bill, which was really cool. So, I mean, all of the international experiences just have their own unique things about them. I mean, a year ago, I played in Norway. I was doing piano bar work, and I was in a very small town, as a lot of towns in Norway are, but it was on this beautiful lake, and there was like a mountain across the lake. And I mean, that wasn't exactly like, like a high profile gig, but I have never been able to think so clearly than when I was there on that gig, just in that area. I mean, it's just amazing.
Understanding everything going on in the world, what's next for you? What do you hope to do next?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's something that I've been really, looking at myself in a very serious way. I said earlier that I never really engulfed myself in technology and, music engineering, and so I never set out to be a music engineer or to be a music tech person, and so I'm not going to be like the person who is the head engineer on an album or anything, but at least being able to do that for myself from here on out looks like it's going to be really important. Video content is something that I have sort of always put on the back burner, and after the last several months, when there has been no opportunity to play live in front of people, it's really shifted my perception, you know, and it's really made me grasp how important the future of video content for musicians and performers is. So all that to say, online stuff, video content, music content online is something that I'm going to be focusing on definitely in the near future.
And with everything now, everybody on social media, they're all doing virtual concerts to kind of in lieu of the whole live concert experience. I'm sure that has some pros and cons, mainly pros, but it's definitely the way it's changed the way a lot of people have viewed that experience. Do you feel that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that I have gotten through the pandemic thus far is I live streamed 1 to 2 times a week since March. I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus right now, but yeah, I did live streams on Facebook, and you know, I think they're great. Live streaming is amazing. I don't think it's going to entirely take the place of live music.
I don't think so either.
You know, even though people have said live music is struggling and la-di-da-di-da, I mean, there's still, you know, huge festivals like Coachella and, you know, whatever else.
Bonnaroo.
And Bonnaroo that have had to be postponed, I mean, this year. But, you know, obviously there's some things still valuable. And like I said, it might be because, you know, these festivals and South by Southwest, which happens in Austin. These things that, I mean, they are or were music centric, but they've ended up being about so much more than music. And I think that might be what keeps them going. And, you know, like I said, my perception has really had to shift to really look kind of beyond just the music point, the music part, because I think incorporating a lot of other things, cultural things, visual things, even food things, you know, I think all of that ends up being part of what makes it sustain itself, if that makes sense.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to go into the music industry, and how do you feel it's changed within the last 20 years or even since you started in the music business?
Well, excuse me, what I say to people, if I still have a piano teacher of mine who is still teaching at Berklee. He's actually the chair of the department.
Okay.
He has, you know, sent several people my way who want to come to Nashville, and he puts them in touch with me. And I always feel kind of dark saying this, but what I say to people is that, you know, you really have to want to do this. And you know, like I said earlier in the interview, you know, it's like music chose me. It was definitely very clear. It wasn't like I made a decision one day, I'm going to do music. You know, there are people who do that. And when I hear that, I'm always like, that's so weird. I can't believe that you had to make this choice. So, I mean, I tell people that, you know, I wouldn't do this if it wasn't that important to me, if it didn't really mean something to me. And I think that's what I would say to people who, you know, and that's not just coming to Nashville. To do music long-term in a professional manner, it has to really mean something to you. And you know, when I say you have to really want to do it, I don't mean you have to be so ambitious that it makes you like bloodshot-eyed in the face. And it just has to really mean something to you, which it does to me, you know, and that's why I do it.
How do you feel that it's how music has evolved since you started playing?
Well, you know, I played piano, acoustic upright piano that my family had. And so even though this is interesting, even though my dad was a computer programmer, I would mess around with Cakewalk, which was the software, you know, music software at the time, and MIDI. You know, that was my first hands-on MIDI experience, which I just kind of figured out myself. But I never really went beyond that when it came to tech, because I loved playing the piano. I loved, kind of original format, raw music performance.
Mm-hmm.
And the way things have changed is that music is so tech-based and so computer-based. And, that's something that I, with a lot of resistance, have had to adapt to. And I'm still learning. I mean, everybody who does music is, and will be, from now on.
Yeah.
So that's really the major way that it has changed, is that it's become so digital, I guess. And even performance, this has really made me think. 5 months ago, when everything locked down and there was no live music, there was no, I thought to myself, people who have been performing online, there are musicians making a living performing online who never play live.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to
myself,
that's
definitely true.
Yeah. And I've, for years I've always been like, I don't understand that. I just didn't grasp the importance of that. And now it made me think, those people are ahead of the game. They're ahead of the curve.
Definitely. And where can people find more about you and your music? Do you have a website? Do you have social media pages? How can people get in touch with you about your music?
Yes. So I have all of the above. I do have a website. It is Rachel Solo or Solo, SOLO.com. It's not RachelSolomon.com. Somebody has owned that website for a long time and they're not giving it up. If you go to RachelSolo.com, that's where you can find out a whole bunch of stuff about me if you'd like to know, and you can listen to some music. I am streaming, the album you mentioned, Right On Time, is streaming on all platforms, and you can download it through iTunes. And yes, it is still available as a physical copy through my website only.
Well, we can talk more about, we've got all day talking about the music business and continue to go on and talk about your career and what you've done, but we are unfortunately out of time. But I want to say thank you very much for coming on and speaking with me, because you have done a lot of great, phenomenally talented work, and it means a lot to me and my listeners that you were able to come on today.
Thank you, Stanley. That means so much. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and you're more than welcome to come on anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. Maybe sometime when the pandemic is over.
Yeah, we'll have you on live in person.
That would be excellent.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, there you have it. Rachel Solomon on the Piano Men with Stanley Carr. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got another fun show next week lined up. Like us on our Facebook page by going to facebook.com/The Piano Men Radio Show, or check us out on YouTube. We've got all our past interviews archived, and I'll see you next week.